We begin my top 36 remaining running back rankings with running backs that I think are probably mid to low end RB3s. We have Raheem Mostert, Samaje Perine, Jaleel McLaughlin, Roshan Johnson, Cam Akers, Emmanuel Wilson, Ramondre Stevenson, and Brian Robinson. Raheem Mostert is going to see action this week. The matchup isn't the best, it's middle of the road. I'm not sure what to expect from him, to be honest. I do think he sees his roughly 40% of the backfield workload. We just haven't seen the same Raheem Mostert this year that we saw last year because of injury. And so it'll be interesting to see how he plays, especially without Tua there. It's decreased everyone else's efficiency, and so we'll have to see how that affects him. Samaje Perine should get a good amount of action against New Orleans. I expect it to be a high-scoring game, and so I do think he has a very safe floor. I just don't think the ceiling is that great with him. McLaughlin plays Las Vegas this week. It's a plus matchup. It's anyone's guess as to who the Denver running back of the week is going to be, if any of them are. Sometimes Bo Nix is the Denver running back. I do think, though, that he's a very, very safe floor play, and the upside is there for a touchdown. It's just, once again, anyone's guess as to who the running back to own any given week is. Roshan Johnson matches up against the Panthers this week. It's a plus matchup. I do think he gets a good amount of volume. I just don't think he scores a touchdown this week, but if he does, you're going to be really happy. Cam Akers is going to be taking the place of Joe Mixon. I do think he splits time with Dare, though, and that limits his upside. It is a plus matchup, and so there is the potential for a big game. It's just he hasn't looked quite as good as he did before multiple Achilles injuries. Emmanuel Wilson is playing the Rams this week. It's a great matchup. I think he gets some volume. I just don't see a touchdown. Ramondre Stevenson is getting... He isn't getting benched in the sense of he's not going to play, it looks like, but he has already lost his starting role to Antonio Gibson. However, Antonio Gibson isn't really a featured back type of player, and so I still think that Ramondre Stevenson gets some work. I just think that while he is in the doghouse, the upside is limited with him. With them playing Miami, though, I think they're going to be comfortably ahead, and so I do think he gets a good amount of volume. Brian Robinson has a terrible matchup against the Browns. I think he gets a couple of receptions, but I don't think we get a ceiling game from Brian Robinson. Running backs that I think are probably high-end RB3s this week are Alexander Mattison, Justice Hill, Tank Bigsby, and Javonte Williams. Mattison matches up against Denver. It's a middle-of-the-road matchup. However, out of all the Raiders running backs, he's the one that's been scoring touchdowns generally, and so I do think that he's a reasonable bet to score this week. I just don't think he sees the overall volume to be much better than an RB3. But out of all of the Raiders running backs, I think he's the one you want to start. Justice Hill has looked really, really good recently. It's a plus matchup against Cincinnati. The Ravens have been running the ball so much and utilizing him in the short passing game that I think he is a reasonably high upside play. I just don't think he's going to have one of those massive weeks. Tank Bigsby is playing the Indianapolis Colts. It's a mediocre matchup. However, in 2 of 4 weeks, he's looked fantastic and much better than Travis Etienne on the ground. However, with Etienne getting the receiving work and getting the goal line work, it does limit Bigsby's upside. Javonte Williams is playing the Vegas Raiders this week. I think it's a very, very solid play. Out of all of the weeks to play Javonte Williams, this is the week. Running backs that I think are probably mid to low end RB2s are Braylon Allen, Rico Dowdle, Zach Charbonnet, Chase Brown, Kareem Hunt, Jerome Ford, and Trey Sermon. Braylon Allen is playing the Vikings. It's a brutal matchup, to be honest with you, but we have seen a lot of upside with him, and he's been very efficient with his touches. For instance, last week, he was more efficient than Breece Hall was, and so I do think that he is a reasonably safe floor play. It's just I don't think we see a ceiling game like his 2-touchdown game a couple weeks ago. Rico Dowdle has been the running back to own out of Dallas. He gets the passing work. He is getting around a 40% rush share, and so I do think he's a very safe floor play this week. It's just I don't project him to score a touchdown, and Pittsburgh isn't a good matchup. Zach Charbonnet is playing the Giants. It's a mediocre draw, but he's looked really, really good. Even with Walker in the lineup, he's been getting a lot of passing work, and so I do think he's a really safe floor play this week. It's just with Walker in there, he's just not going to have one of those top 10 weeks. Chase Brown is playing Baltimore. It's one of the worst matchups possible. However, he's looked really good the last 2 weeks, and I think he's a decent floor play this week. I just don't think we see a boom week. Kareem Hunt is playing the New Orleans Saints. It's not the worst matchup. With Kareem Hunt, I think he gets a good amount of volume with Pacheco out. I just don't think the ceiling is necessarily there. I don't think he scores a touchdown, but I think he gets a couple receptions. Jerome Ford is playing Washington this week. I think he's going to be very efficient. I just don't project a touchdown. Trey Sermon is starting in place of JT this week. It's a plus matchup. I think you could definitely throw him in as your RB2 if you're weak there. He's preferably a flex play, but there is a good amount of upside this week against Jacksonville. If you like what you're hearing and seeing, feel free to like and subscribe. It's a free and easy way to support the channel. Make sure to check out my other positional rankings videos as well. Make sure you don't have any injured players in your lineups, and make sure you dominate your fantasy matchups this week. Running backs that I think are potentially mid RB2s to low end RB1s are Antonio Gibson, Travis Etienne, Zach Moss, Devon Achane, James Cook, Najee Harris, Aaron Jones, and DeAndre Swift. Antonio Gibson is going to be starting this week. I do think Stevenson sees a decent amount of carries. Gibson isn't the biggest back. Against Miami, though, it is a plus matchup. I think that he gets a good amount of run, and he is very good through the air. Travis Etienne is playing Indianapolis. You could definitely do worse in terms of your matchup. He gets the goal line work and he gets the receiving game work, so he is the preferable play out of the Jacksonville backfield. I just don't know what upside any running back in this offense truly possesses. Zach Moss is playing Baltimore. Don't like the matchup for him. He is the preferred back, at least he was until this past week. I still think he's, in general, the running back you want to own out of Cincinnati. I just don't think we get a ceiling game. Achane is playing New England. It should be a plus matchup. However, with Tua out, he's been very inefficient on the ground. He should reclaim his role in the passing game in terms of his efficiency. I don't think that changes. But the ceiling with Achane isn't what it was with Tua. James Cook is playing Houston. It's a brutal matchup. However, James Cook has looked really, really good recently. You can't afford to sit him. I don't think we have one of those boom games, but I do think he's a very safe play this week. Najee Harris is playing Dallas. I think he's going to be very efficient in this game with Jalen Warren not playing. And so I do like him this week. I think he also scores a touchdown. Aaron Jones is playing the Jets. I don't like the matchup for him. However, Aaron Jones is Aaron Jones. The Vikings offense is very difficult to stop, and he's looked great, and he's getting around a 24 to 25% target share out of the backfield. And that just gives you a crazy high floor. DeAndre Swift is playing the Panthers. He was a complete bust all the way until this past week. Then they figured it out. It's a plus matchup against the Panthers. You have to play him, and I do think he has a ton of upside this week. Running backs that I think are comfortably going to be top 10 options, but I don't see being the RB1 overall, are Kenneth Walker, Chuba Hubbard, Josh Jacobs, and James Conner. Kenneth Walker's coming off a 3-touchdown game. I don't think that repeats, but he is one of the better runners of the football in the NFL, and so any week he's a high upside play. Chuba Hubbard has looked fantastic with Andy Dalton. I think we have a very, very good game from him. I just don't think it's going to be top 5 this week. Josh Jacobs is playing the Rams. He still hasn't scored a touchdown, but it is coming, and I do think he gets it this week. James Conner's playing San Francisco. He's a must-start RB1 every single week until he gets hurt. And so you just ride him out as long as you can, and I think he gets a good amount of points this week. Running backs that I think are safe top 5 options this week are Breece Hall, Jordan Mason, Kyren Williams, Alvin Kamara, and Derrick Henry. Breece Hall is playing the Vikings this week. I don't like the matchup for him. However, with the exception of this past week, he's been a very, very safe floor play, and he hasn't had one of those giant games yet, but he's been consistently around 18 to 20 points in a full PPR, and he is one of the better talents in the NFL. And so I still think he's a top 5 option. I just don't think we get a crazy game from him. Jordan Mason is playing the Arizona Cardinals. It's a plus matchup. He's definitely a threat to be the RB1 overall. I think it's going to be Derrick Henry, but Jordan Mason should absolutely have a good game. Kyren Williams is playing Green Bay. It's a good matchup. I think the offense is going to continue to run through him with Puka and Cooper Kupp out. And so I think he's a must start every single week, no matter who he plays. It's just this week, I think he's going to have a very good game. Alvin Kamara is playing Kansas City. It's not a good matchup. However, it's Alvin Kamara. He's going to get a ton of work. I think he scores a touchdown, and he does have the potential for a crazy game because he is absolutely matchup proof. Derrick Henry's playing Cincinnati. It's a plus matchup. He's been on a tear the last 2 weeks, and I do think that continues. Running backs that I think are probably mid to low end RB3s this week are Raheem Mostert, Samaje Perine, Jaleel McLaughlin, Roshan Johnson, Cam Akers, Emmanuel Wilson, Ramondre Stevenson, and Brian Robinson. Running backs that I think are safe RB3s are Alexander Madison, Justice Hill, Tank Bigsby, and Javonte Williams. Running backs that I think are mid to low end RB2s are Braylon Allen, Rico Dowdle, Zach Charbonnet, Chase Brown, Kareem Hunt, Jerome Ford, and Trey Sermon. Running backs that I think are mid RB2s to potentially low end RB1s this week are Antonio Gibson, Travis Etienne, Zach Moss, Devon Achane, James Cook, Najee Harris, Aaron Jones, and DeAndre Swift. Running backs that I think are safe RB1s, but I wouldn't project to be top 5 this week are Kenneth Walker, Chuba Hubbard, Josh Jacobs, and James Conner. And then running backs that I think are definite candidates to be the RB1 overall, and I think are going to be top 5, are Breece Hall, Jordan Mason, Kyren Williams, Alvin Kamara, and Derrick Henry. Alright, so who do I have too high? Who do I have too low? Is there somebody that I'm missing from this list entirely that should be on here? Let me know below in the comment section, and let me know why. With that being said, if you like what you've seen and heard, feel free to like and subscribe. It's a free and easy way to support the channel. Make sure to check out my other positional rankings. And yeah, thanks and have a good day.